Hello everyone, this is Mrs. B, and this is for your 7th grade language arts classroom, and today what we're going to be discussing is active voice versus passive voice. Now I'm pretty sure you probably are all wondering, why do I need to know this? Why is this important? Why are you wasting my precious, wonderful time when I could be watching Netflix with this? Well, whenever it comes to this class, and like we'll discuss in life in general, voice and choice is very important. And in the case of writing, you have two choices. The main ones would be active and passive voice. What we're going to do is we're going to distinguish between the two, why one is usually more favorable than the other when it comes to the kind of writing that we will be doing in this class, and also how to be able to identify better what a subject and a verb in a sentence is. All in all, the big picture is, again, you will be assigned reading and writing activities throughout the school year, so it will be definitely good to know what voices you're using, and how you are employing them and how well you are employing them. The fact that what you have to say and what you are writing matters. How what you are writing sometimes will reach an audience, and your audience definitely matters. And whether or not your audience understands what you were trying to say most definitely matters. There's no real reason for us to want to write anything if the people that are reading it don't understand or get tired by the time that we end a sentence. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. So we're going to move on. Just a quick review of subjects and verbs. I know this seems pretty old hat to a lot of you, but at the same time, it's always good to review, because the subjects and verbs and how they play in a sentence are key to understanding active voice and passive voice. So, the subject of a sentence is what or whom the sentence is about. So, in this sentence, my mom runs 10 laps every day. The subject being my mom. Mom is the subject. She is the one that is carrying out the action. The verb in a sentence is an action being carried out. So in this case, my mom runs 10 laps every day. It's my mom carrying out the action. Runs is the verb. That's the action actually being done. And that's not my mom, but you get the picture. So, what does it mean to be active? When you think of being active, what are some phrases or words that come to mind? If you don't already have it in front of you, I want you to get a pencil or pen and paper, and I want you, yes, you, to be active with this lesson. I want you to participate. I want you to carry out an action while you're listening to this, other than just listening. So, I want you to get your pen and a sheet of paper and jot down a couple of words or phrases in your notebook that you think of when you think of the word active. And it says that you have 30 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and go on because you will be able to pause this and go about your leisure. The 30 seconds, if you take a little longer than 30 seconds, that's okay, but I do want you to try and write down what first comes to your mind. So try and take as close to 30 seconds for this activity as possible. So go. Alright, so moving on. We're going to do the same thing that we did with active, but we're going to again ask, what does it mean to be passive? So when you think of the word passive, what comes to mind? So here are a couple of helpful hints. I know that passive might not be as well known or more used as of a word as active. So here are a couple definitions just to get you started. One, to be passive means to be accepting or allowing what happens or what others do without active response or resistance. Also, it can be used to describe someone or a character who we might be reading about, or sentences that we are going to be identifying that allow things to happen or who accepts other people when what they do, as opposed to trying to change anything about their situation. So typically when you are passive, or if you are reading a passive sentence, it is the subject who is receiving the action as opposed to the one who is doing the action. So I want you to jot down a couple of words or ideas that you associate with being passive. Alright, so now that we have that out of the way, we're going to pin the two against each other, see which one might win out whenever it comes to the writing that we will be doing in this class, and a lot of the times the writing that you will be doing out in the real world. So, let's get ready to rumble! Alright, so in quarter number 1 we have active voice. So active voice is used more often in English papers and in most standard writing. Active voice is the more popular of the two. As you can see, Hulk Hogan is a rather popular dude. So when you're using active voice, the subject is what is carrying out the action. So the subject of the sentence is the thing or person that is responsible for the verb happening in that sentence. Active voice also tends to make sentences more clear and concise because it is less awkward and less wordy. It's seen as the stronger and more reasonable choice of the two voices in most circumstances, and I can probably tell you right now, if I see you guys using passive voice, I might try and get you to switch it to active voice, just because it usually will tighten up your paragraphs and make the flow of what you're trying to say that much better. So we're going to do some examples of active voice in writing. So example 1, Miss B watched several horror movies on Halloween night, which is very true. So what is the action verb of this sentence? Watched. Watched, what did I do? I watched. Who, what is doing the verb in this sentence? Miss B. Alright, example 2. So, Batman saved Gotham City from evil. So, there, we got our Batman there. So, who is carrying out the action? Who is the subject in this, right? Batman. Batman is the one who is saving Gotham City. And what did Batman do? What is his action? I kind of already answered that, but he is saved. The actual word that's being used in this sentence that would be considered the verb is saved. So, and in quarter number 2, we have passive voice, all curled up in a corner, because it's kind of the wimpier of the two and not really seen as the one that you really want to use that much, because like I'm doing right now, it makes it a lot more wordy than necessary. So, unlike active voice where the subject is doing the action, passive voice is the target of the action. So, I want you to think back and revisit back to slide 5. If you need to pause this and go back, I understand. But what it means to be passive. So the target or receiver of the action in the sentence plays the role of the subject, as opposed to an active voice, the subject is the one that's doing it. The subject is Hulk. He's the one that's, making things happen. Whereas this guy is just curled up in a corner and just letting things happen to him. So, when used, passive voice is usually used more for scientific writing. So in this case, when I say scientific writing, I'm referring to writing or speaking that is unlike regular or natural speech. It can also seem awkward and unnecessarily wordy. It makes sentences and paragraphs not flow as naturally and can sound somewhat robotic and unnatural because, and as you'll see, we will do what we did with active voice and go over some examples. It makes sentences a lot longer than they need to be, just again, like I am doing right now. It's very rarely used in academic writing, and its usage is often discouraged. And I will already tell you again that if I see passive voice, or if I see that you guys are struggling with your writing and getting to the point, I will encourage you to use active voice a lot more in this class than passive voice. And you'll see why. What we're going to do is we're going to take the same sentence examples for active voice and see how they sound in passive voice. So the original active voice sentence from slide 9 was, Miss B watched several horror movies on Halloween night. So what part of the sentence is the action being done to? So several horror movies. So the action of watched, what's being watched? Several horror movies. So several horror movies then becomes the subject. So we're going to place that at the beginning of the sentence and have that subject instead be the receiver of the action as opposed to the one, me, Miss B, doing the action. So then the sentence would read, several horror movies were watched by Miss B on Halloween night. Sounds a little funky, right? I mean, it's still getting the same thing across. It just seems like it's beating around the bush a little more than it needs to. So let's do the same thing with the sentence about Batman. So Batman saved Gotham City from evil. That was the original active voice sentence. The verb in the sentence is saved. What is being saved, though? Who is receiving the action of saved? The answer to that being Gotham City. Gotham City is the one that is the one that is receiving the action. Thus, we're going to go ahead and make the receiver of that action the subject. So we're going to put Gotham City as the subject in the beginning of the sentence. So then that sentence is going to read, Gotham City was saved by Batman from evil. Just, again, sounds a little wonky. So although the sentence has the same message as active voice sentence, it sounds just a little bit odd and maybe not as concise. Subjects in passive sentences are passive and let the action happen to it. So just always think about passive, the little man curled up in a corner, just waiting for things to happen to him as opposed to him doing the action himself. So, when you come to class, this is what I expect of you. I want you to find an example of an active voice sentence in media. So, movie, music, book, online text. They won't be so hard because they're everywhere. So, I also want you to provide a brief explanation of why that is active. I want you to underline the subject. I want you to put a box around the verb. And if you can, don't panic if you can't, but if you can, try and do the same with passive voice. I understand it's harder to find examples in media of passive voice considering that it is discouraged and active voice is used a lot more often, but just try maybe as a challenge. But if you can't, just go ahead and take the active voice sentence that you find, and I want you to transform it to passive voice. And I want you to, again, underline the subject and box the verb. I will see you next class. I am excited to answer any questions, clear up any confusions that you might have, and we will go over this a little bit more in class before we move on to more writing activities. I know you can do it, so I'm excited to see you all, and I hope that you enjoy this lesson.